Hi everybody, Cedar Lee here, and I'm going to show you my latest mural project, the Asheville Garden Murals. So 17 years ago, in the year 2004, it's currently 2021, I painted these 4 murals on this gigantic shipping container that is, on the short sides, it's 8 feet by 8 feet, and on the long sides, it's 8 feet tall and 16 feet across. And this is in a backyard garden in Asheville, North Carolina. This is being used as a storage shed. So it's basically a small building. So after 17 years, we were ready to repaint these murals with a more modern upgrade. So I agreed to do this job of repainting these murals that I did when I was only 23 years old and painting over them with my more modern style of today. So what did we decide to paint over the old murals? What are the new murals going to be? Well, the first step in the planning process was to ask the client what they want. So I, of course, told them that whatever I come up with in the end is going to be my creation and it's going to be in my style, but I asked them for some imagery and some ideas to get me started on the planning process. So they came up with ideas for the 4 sides, and this first side is going to be facing the street. It's one of the short sides, and they wanted Mount Fuji with cherry blossoms in the foreground. And then on the other short side, on the back of the building, they wanted a thistle and a bee. And on the long sides, they wanted pansies on one of the sides. And then on the other side, they wanted a mermaid. And okay, these things don't really fit together, but I'm going to make a plan to take all these different themes and use my artistic style and cohesive colors to make them all fit together. So that's the challenge. And of course, some of the examples of the things they wanted, they just pulled, from other artists' work, which I would never just copy another artist's work. So the idea is to take these images as inspiration, as a jumping off point to make my own thing from. So step 2, I'm going to create my own original designs where I take the client's ideas and what they want, and then combine that with my own ideas about my own artwork and my own style, and create something that is entirely unique. So in my artwork, I use a lot of bright sunshine and crepuscular rays, that's the rays of the sun, in my work. So I wanted to include that bright sunny imagery along with the stuff that they wanted. So I took the image they sent me of Mount Fuji and the cherry blossoms, and I decided I wanted that, but also with some branches, more close-up branches of the cherry tree with the bigger blossoms in the foreground. So I just pulled some images from Google Images, and again, I'm not directly going to copy any of these. This is just to get ideas for the composition and what I'm going to do, but then when I actually do the painting, it's going to be my own style completely. And so this is what I came up with. For this first mural, you can see I played around with filters in Photoshop a little bit, where I collaged together different photos, come up with a composition, and then apply some of the art filters over it to sort of break down the whole image into shapes and make sure it looks pleasing to me. Part of why this is useful is because it also works to just sort of look at an image and blur your eyes, just to get an idea of the overall shapes and see if anything looks wonky or if you want to change things around a little bit. So for the mermaid side, I took those sun rays that I was inspired by, and then the mermaid that they sent me, and then I decided I was going to have this mermaid sitting on a rock. So I found some images of the waves, ocean waves crashing on rocks, and I'm going to put the mermaid on top of that rock. And then a giant ocean wave that I decided to include to make it more exciting and dynamic. And this picture of the wave is a photo by Clark Little, who's an amazing photographer who specializes in photographing giant ocean waves. So I'm going to combine all of these elements into an image. And this is what I came up with. The mermaid sitting on the rock with the sunset in the background with the huge rays of light going across the sky, and then the big Clark Little wave on the other side. Okay, so for the next mural, the thistle and the bee. Again, the image they sent me here is obviously the work of an artist, and I don't want to copy another artist's work. So I want to get this general same idea of a thistle and a bee, but make it my own. So I found some images of thistles and bees and collaged them together, again with that same sky that I loved, and came up with this. And you can see when you piece together a bunch of different images pulled from different places, you end up with a totally new image. And of course, even this is going to be very different by the time I paint it. It's going to be painted in my own style. And lastly, the side with the pansies. So all they knew was that they wanted pansies filling up this giant wall. This is one of the long walls. And again, they had sent me a painting made by another artist, so I'm not going to copy that. So I just found a bunch of different pictures of pansies, and I collaged them together, and I wanted it to be sort of looking up at the pansies from below, like an ant's eye view with the sky behind the pansies. So I took that sky that I liked, and I took these images of pansies, and I came up with this. So that's how I came up with my 4 designs. So now I have mock-ups for the 4 designs, which just to make sure that it looks right, I took these images and I sort of pasted them in Photoshop onto a picture of the blank wall to make sure it looks how I like it. And once I was satisfied with the designs, I had to deal with some of the practical concerns of what colors of paint am I going to buy and what products am I going to need. And I collected a list of things I needed and made sure that I had all that stuff ready to go before I started the painting. Now, these colors that I decided on are not the actual color palette that you're going to end up seeing in the end. These are the colors that I needed to buy, and then I'm going to mix these colors to make all the other colors I needed. And then I ended up adding to this list of simple primary sort of colors, I also added Payne's gray and I think a transparent red. But this got me started with which colors I needed to buy. So that part done, I have all my supplies and I'm ready to go. And now I have to get the structure ready to repaint over these old murals. So first we had to make sure that everything was really clean. So before this video, we had the whole thing pressure washed, and then this was just hosing it off last minute to make sure there's absolutely no dirt on any of it, including the roof. We're not going to paint a mural on the roof, but we are going to paint the roof with primer and a coat of blue paint. So we're making sure that everything is clean and dry. So you can see I have 2 helpers at this stage just to get this all done quickly. And having cleaned and dried the whole structure, at this point I applied 2 coats of primer, which is Exterior Kills. And this part is kind of fun to watch because you can see the first coat mostly covers up the mural, but you can see the murals from before sort of showing through a little bit through the transparent first coat. And then when I applied the second coat, you can see it go away completely, which I think is satisfying to watch. And my helpers are still helping me out with this part. And then after the 2 coats of primer were on there and dried, I did 2 coats of an exterior water-based paint. It was a very light sky blue. And my reasoning for painting it sky blue, this is to make my art colors go much further, because I can do thinner coats of the colors over this, and I know that I want some of this sky blue showing through at certain parts, because there's going to be a light blue sky in all of my designs. And this also makes everything look neat and tidy. I'm taking extra care to do really clean edges. So at this point, it's almost like you could leave it as it is and not do any murals, because it just looks like it got a nice new coat of paint on it and it looks all clean and new. So this is a good, fresh, clean, very light blue canvas to start my murals on. So at this point, it's time to transfer those designs onto these giant walls. And so I had these mock-ups that I created in Photoshop. And so I used what is called the doodle grid method to get these images up onto these big walls. So I randomly drew these big sloppy letters and numbers all over each of the 4 walls. Then I took a picture of those random doodles on the blank wall, and then I, in Photoshop, superimposed that image of the doodles on top of my mock-up design at a very low opacity, so that you can see the design through it. And then the idea of this is that with a traditional grid where you have lines or dots in a grid configuration in squares, you use these squares as guidelines to tell where your lines are going when you're transferring your drawing, so that you get the proportions of everything correct. It's the same idea. You're using the doodles as visual guidelines to tell where the lines go as you're drawing. So you get the proportions on there right. And the idea is to just get the whole thing up on there so that you're ready to paint. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to get the proportions more or less right. And if you get this step right, everything else will fall into place as you're painting. So you want these lines, the guidelines for your design, to be correct. And then when I do the painting, I'm going to paint over all of those numbers and letters. Those doodles are not going to stay. They're just little guidelines that I drew with a stick of charcoal, and they are going away. So once my designs are all ready to go, and I have outlines for the basic shapes of my designs, then at this point, I'm finally ready to start the actual painting part. And I will just show you the time-lapse footage of the 4 murals one by one, starting with the Mount Fuji and cherry blossoms. So Mount Fuji and cherry blossoms is now complete. Next up is the side with the mermaid. here's the mermaid mural complete with the giant ocean wave, the mermaid sitting on the rock gazing out at the ocean. And here's the corner, that corner of the structure showing the Mount Fuji and the mermaid at the same time. So next up will be the thistle and the bee. Remember that one? This is on the other short side on the back of the building. This one, it's kind of sad. I lost most of the footage during the painting process that day. I thought it was recording and it wasn't recording for like 6 hours or something. So this is one of those unfortunate things about filming footage. It happens. It's not the end of the world. I still got good photos in the end. And then from this corner, the back corner, you can see both the mermaid mural and the thistle and bee mural at the same time. One more side to go, those giant pansies. And you can see the giant pansies. I had to do a lot of work up on top of a ladder because that wall is the tallest because the ground below it goes down a few feet further. So that was fun and challenging to do all of that painting up on a ladder. And then here's the pansies complete. And I was overjoyed to finish this project. This was a lot of work. I actually completed this project very quickly. I did all of the painting part. Of course, the time-lapse footage always makes it look like I did it much faster than I really did, but I still did it pretty fast. I completed all of the painting part over the course of a week, and all of the planning part that came before to ensure that the painting part would go smoothly, that also took me probably a little more than a week. So a little more than 2 weeks for this whole project. I ended up using the 2 coats of exterior primer. I used Kills for this. It's a metal structure. And then I ended up using 2 coats of that blue, sky blue base paint. And then I ended up using, for my art colors, golden fluid acrylics. It's a decent option. It was also the option that I could most readily find in the local store, so that's why I chose to use those. And it's also going to get a UV protectant clear coat, which isn't going to be shown in this video because that's coming later. Thank you so much for watching. This was an amazing project to work on, and I am available for mural projects, interior and exterior, in the Portland, Oregon area. So if you are interested in hiring me for your next mural project, just shoot me an email and let's talk.